This is Business, Equity, and Opportunities.
Good morning. Welcome to Business, Equity, and Opportunities. I'm Scott Sander. We are just a couple of weeks away from the end of the holiday shopping season. If you own a small business, you're likely hoping the cash register is ringing like Christmas bells. If you're not running a business yet, we'd like you to stay here for the next hour so we can help you get there. Each week we focus on 7 topics, things that all entrepreneurs face. We speak to people who've been through the process in hopes that sharing their experiences will help everyone. The topics are getting started, accessing capital, this week in business, accounting and bookkeeping, running your business day to day, an industry focus, and always a success story. We're here with a new show every Sunday on Wish TV, and you can also watch through a live stream at wishtv.com. We post each of our 7 weekly segments from past shows on our website. It's beoshow.com. Watch them, share them, scan the QR code that you have right now on your screen with your phone, and we have a separate code for each segment to get you right where you want to go. While you're there, listen to our Business, Equity, and Opportunities podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. More about that this hour. And subscribe to our weekly newsletter that our team updates every Tuesday. Now let's get to the business of business. Here's what's coming up today on Business, Equity, and Opportunities. Jane King has the latest straight from Wall Street news on the governor's luncheon for scouting. We look at business services for nonprofits, how to resolve workplace conflicts. A local design house has trending gift items, and we meet the students enrolled in the first entrepreneur program at the Walker Career Center. First, getting started. The head of our All Indiana Podcast Network, Alan Haupt, is back with more of his conversation with Dave Jackson about pods by and for small business owners.
This is Business, Equity, and Opportunities. Getting started.
So we're talking today with the principal of the School of Podcasting, award-winning Hall of Fame podcaster, Dave Jackson. Morning, Dave.
Good morning.
Yeah, and so as you are planning the podcast then, so what steps are needed? I mean, we've talked about we need a microphone, we need artwork. As you're planning what you're going to talk about, what sort of steps are we needing to follow there?
Yeah, you need to come up with a name, and this is where sometimes you want to call it, L&J Plumbing. Well, nobody's searching. They might be searching for plumbing, but L&J not so much. So you have to really put yourself in the shoes of your audience and think, what are they searching for, and what kind of person is going to want to listen to this show? Because the more obvious it can be, the better. Sometimes we get a little too cute with the name of our show, and that can actually kind of end up shooting you in the foot a little bit. I had somebody once that was going to name a show After the Darkness. And I said, go ask a bunch of people, what do you think this show is about? And he did. And somebody said, isn't that a band from the 90s? And somebody thought it was about vampires. And I asked him again, what's your show about? And he said, it's about my life after blindness. And so I was like, that's the name of your show. So any kind of, obvious name that has your keywords in it that you're trying to, rank for, things like that. And then the other thing you can kind of think about, especially if it's like a family-owned business, lean into whatever your story is. And every business has a story. And so you can kind of mix those into the podcast if you have a founder or, the CEO. And I realize CEOs are really busy, but if you can somehow squeeze them in for a minute or two of every episode, even if it's just to introduce, hey, today's topic, we're going to talk about blah, blah, blah. And here is, and then if you have somebody else do the podcast, but if you can have them involved, it just gives the podcast legitimacy. I remember, I don't think they're still doing it, but Evernote, the really popular note-taking app, they had their marketing director, they had like their technical person, and then they would come in with the CEO and they would answer questions from their audience. And so what's that doing is it's creating a bond between you and your potential audience or your current customers, depending on, which side of that sale they're on. And I always thought, wow, that's amazing that the CEO is taking time to do that. But it also showed that, wow, this guy really cares about his customers, because he would come in just for that segment to answer that. And then the other thing I always thought was interesting is they had a segment where tell us how you're using our product. And so these people would they had a little button where you could click and send voicemail, or you could call on your phone or whatever it was to capture your voice. And these people like, oh, I never thought of this, but I'm using Evernote for, and then they would tell their story. And it was interesting because as an entrepreneur, you're like, ooh, that's a good idea. I've never thought of using it that way. But it was really a commercial without sounding like, a commercial. So there are a lot of different ways you can work this. The goal is to build brand loyalty, to show that you're reliable by having a consistent schedule. And when you are helpful, it creates that whole know, like, and trust thing that we all talk about when it comes to sales. When you got know, like, and trust and say, oh, by the way, we're launching a new product, you might want to check this out. That's you have, like I say, it's not the end of cold calling, but your leads are much warmer than they used to be.
Sure. And it goes to the point that maybe somebody who's thinking about starting a podcast for their business might think, well, hey, this is a commercial that I control the reins of. I have the narrative of this commercial. But if you think of it beyond the commercial and more of a building a relationship with your customers or potential customers, that's probably a better way to think of it. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you can get communication going with your audience, I know the company I work for, we were doing a webinar once. We actually would promote webinars on our podcast. So that's another kind of thing you can do with this is update what's going on, and et cetera, et cetera. And somebody brought up an idea, and we had kind of done half of that idea. And I said, boy, that's a good idea. I never thought of that. So you end up actually getting free kind of consulting from your actual customers, like, oh, I wish it did this. And then you go, oh, you know what? I know it does A, but we've never really thought of doing B. And then you can go through that process and talk to the rest of your newsletter or whatever you're putting out there. Hey, we're thinking of adding this feature. Somebody brought it up in our podcast. What do you think? And now you've got your built-in focus group.
That's a great point. So once you have your podcast, how do you let your customers know that you have that and it's something that they might want to check out?
Yeah, you want to make sure you're in the top directory. So right now that's Apple and Spotify, but I'd also be in like Amazon Music, and there's iHeartRadio and all sorts of other different places. And it takes maybe 10 minutes to get your podcast listed in there. And once you're there, I'm assuming that most businesses hopefully have some sort of email list that they can say, hey, we've been communicating, to you via this newsletter. We're still doing that, but now we have this new way. You can listen to us in the car while you're walking the dog, whatever you're doing. And then we have this new podcast, and then have the links to Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon right there in the email. So no matter that's going to cover a huge chunk of podcast listeners. So they can then click on those links, go right to their favorite app and follow the show. And that way, every time a new episode comes out, it automatically comes down to their phone, or if they're watching online, things like that. And that's the other benefit. If a business is already blogging, you've already got the content. Just read that into a microphone and then throw a player on that same blog post. And what happens is the words attract Google, which is great. So Google, you come up in a search, somebody clicks on it, they go over, they click play on the player, and now Google goes, well, that's interesting. Every time we send somebody over to Alan's website, they're there for like 13 minutes. That must be really good stuff. So it can actually help boost your SEO and web traffic as well.
Again, thank you, Dave. I appreciate your input and talking to us today. Dave Jackson, everybody.
Well, thanks for having me. This has been great.
If you'd like to learn more about podcasting, perhaps do one, the All Indiana Podcast Network can help create, produce, and distribute yours. Visit us at beoshow.com. Scan the QR code on the screen. We'll get you everything you need to know. If you have information that has helped you launch or operate a small business, tell us how you're doing. We'd love to share your story. Shoot us an email at beo@wishtv.com. Up next, Jane King from the NASDAQ when Business Equity and Opportunities returns.
One-on-one conversations with major political candidates from the voters' point of view.
The All Indiana Politics Podcast with Phil Sanchez. Unfiltered. Available in both audio and video format on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Access to capital today takes us to Wall Street, home of decisions that can directly affect you and your access to money. Jane King is our insider there from the NASDAQ with some of the issues she's watching in these waning weeks of the year.
This is Business, Equity, and Opportunities. Access to capital.
We are right in the middle of holiday shopping. How's it going so far? Black Friday and Cyber Monday saw record sales, although the average amount spent per customer was about the same as last year, right around $321. Rod Runyon, a professor of retailing at the White Lodging J.W. Marriott Junior School of Hospitality and Tourism Management at Purdue University, agrees with the NRF's forecast that online spending is expected to rise again this year. In an interview for the Associated Press, Runyon said the increase in online shopping is due to several factors, such as convenience and ease of comparing prices. Also, it's December, which means more than just cooler weather and holiday celebrations. It's also layoff season. Job cuts tend to spike in December and January as companies prepare for structural changes heading into the new year. This is according to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Nearly 200 Howard County employees will soon be without work after an automotive supplier announced mass layoffs at two separate Kokomo facilities, becoming the latest instance of closures or layoffs affecting hundreds of Hoosiers. According to notices submitted by the Indiana Department of Workforce Development, Borg Warner, an automotive components supplier based in Michigan, will conduct mass layoffs at the two facilities that are located within a block of another on Morgan Street in Kokomo. And just this past week, North Face and Vans owner VF Corp laid off 500 employees, while the cloud computing company Twilio said it would lay off about 5% of its workforce. Spotify is cutting 17% of workers. Now, while the labor market is still strong, experts say there will likely be an uptick in layoffs in the coming months. Well, 2023 wouldn't be complete without talking about what a year it's been for Lilly & Company. Lilly's stock soared on hopes that its new weight loss drug will be a big seller for years. With the early success of the drug Mounjaro, Lilly became the world's largest pharmaceutical company. With the success of new contracts at automakers, the UAW is looking to expand. It's been targeting non-unionized car makers like Tesla. And in fact, the UAW had a meeting with Toyota Indiana workers in Princeton. Toyota recently announced a wage increase for some of their employees, a move the UAW says was meant to disrupt their unionizing efforts. Well, as we head into 2024, there are two things Wall Street will be watching. One is a potential economic slowdown. Two recent predictions from JP Morgan and the NABE are calling for a slowdown, perhaps even a recession in the first 3 months of next year. And of course, the election. Who is elected president, as well as which party controls the House and Senate, will be extremely important for taxes, regulation, education, global trade, and innovation. Back to you.
If you want more about any of our access to capital stories, they all live on the links through our website, beoshow.com. Bit later, business services, especially for nonprofits. Before that, though, we preview the governor's luncheon on scouting. It's coming up on the other side of this break.
This is Business, Equity, and Opportunities. This Week in Business.
This week in business, the annual Governor's Luncheon for Scouting kicks off its 2024 fundraising campaign, Tuesday this week, the 12th. The luncheon is the largest fundraising event of the year for the Crossroads of America Council, and organizers claim it's the largest of its kind in the country. Pulls together business and community leaders from across central Indiana on the field of Lucas Oil Stadium. The goal is to raise $1 million to support scouting programs across central Indiana. Wish TV is proud to be a sponsor again this year, with Anthony Calhoun serving as the Master of Ceremonies. Co-chairs for this year's event are Akila Darden, founder of the Darden Group, Kip Chase, Senior Vice President of Human Resources for Lilly, Steve Campbell, Vice President of Communications for the Indianapolis Colts, and DeJuan McCoy, the owner of Circle City Broadcasting and our boss here. The theme this year is Legends and Leadership, offering an example of how communities and businesses can come together to help grow the leaders of tomorrow. If you'd like more information about how you can attend this one-of-a-kind event, you can find it on our website. Follow the QR code on your screen to beoshow.com. This year, Wish TV will also be airing a one-hour special highlighting the luncheon with interviews and behind-the-scenes videos you won't want to miss. That's coming up 1 week from today, Sunday, December 17th at 5 in the afternoon.
This Week in Business is made possible by InnoPower.
Also this week in business, InnoPower recognizes Black excellence in education. We honor Megan Kinsey of Victory College Prep. Congratulations, you're an excellent educator. Also this week in business, entries are open. Tickets are on sale for TechPoint's 25th anniversary Mira Awards, honoring the best of tech in Indiana. The Mira Gala recognizes excellence and innovation in 18 different award categories. There are spots available for judges, volunteers, partners, and sponsors. Entry deadline is January 19th. If your business has an event you'd like us to mention on our show, send us an email 3 weeks ahead of time at beo@wishtv.com. Coming up, how to work out workplace conflicts. Before that, though, accounting and bookkeeping and business services for the nonprofit community. This is Business Equity and Opportunities.
Every business is unique, and every business has a target audience. Circulus Digital Media can help you connect and grow your customer base with turnkey digital solutions that are nimble to reach a customer base that spans the globe. Pinpoint a specific audience down to the smallest details. No matter the size of your business, put Circulus Digital Media to work for you and get results.
Welcome back. Time to take a look at accounting and bookkeeping. Surekha DiOrio currently leads the financial management and bookkeeping service areas for Mission Management. She's also CFO of Indiana Youth Services Association and has provided contract CFO services for various nonprofit organizations around the region. We talked to her about whether outsourcing some of your company's accounting needs can be big for you, especially for a nonprofit.
This is Business Equity and Opportunities. Accounting and bookkeeping.
So one of my other roles here is as Executive Director of Mission Management Services. And Mission Management Services is what we call a social venture company. So the purpose of the program is to make money for the home organization, to help offset administrative costs, help develop programs. But Mission Management is really unique in that the model is to provide business services to other not-for-profit organizations. And in that, help them manage their mission as well. Oftentimes, we'll find an executive director working on QuickBooks. Well, that is not an efficient, effective use of their time. So we come in and provide those services to them at a very competitive, actually very reasonable, usually below market rate to help other not-for-profits. And then they are able to focus, that executive director or program director or whoever has been doing that, then is able to focus on driving their own mission forward. People that aren't trained or qualified, not that they can't do the work, not that they're not intelligent enough, but that's not their passion, that's not their training. So then they're spending a lot of extra time getting things done. And they're not necessarily producing reports that help a board see the whole picture. A lot of times when we've come in, we've seen sort of not your standard income statement and balance sheet, but some form of, maybe a check register that they're bringing to the board and saying, okay, this is what we're doing. Well, that doesn't really give you the whole picture of what's happening in the organization. So I find a lot of times reporting can be lacking. Retention of documents, for instance. Nobody knows or probably cares, and why should they, what the retention rules are. We know all that and we make sure that's done properly. Payroll, tax liabilities. A lot of times people don't understand the importance of making sure those are paid on time and that those are the top of the list. You have payroll and then you have the government, and you need to make sure you prioritize those. Just things like that, they don't know those things, and they really shouldn't have to know those things. They should have somebody that does that for them. I find, unfortunately, I think, for-profit businesses, they just tend to pay their people a little bit better than we do in the nonprofit sector. We have a different level here where, you've got people with such heart and such passion, a lot of times doing this work for half of what they could get in the private sector. But I think that really shows their commitment and their passion. And so one of the other things that we try to do here at IYSA is try to look at the market and see what's out there and make sure that our people are being paid a fair market wage for the jobs that they're doing. Another difference is a lot of times they just have more unrestricted cash, I guess is what you would call it. They are in charge of how their funds are spent. We sometimes in the not-for-profit world are restricted by grants, by donors, on how we can spend our money. So they have a little more leeway and they have more choice in how they spend their funds than we do. I think some donors just have a real passion for certain things. And so they want their funds used for those certain things. And I think that's important to honor. But I think also when we can present the whole picture of what the organization does and say, make the case for letting us choose how those funds are used, then I think that's how we bring donors on board, when they look at our entire organization and not just this piece of it or that piece of it. So if we can tell the story in its entirety, I think we have a much better chance of getting unrestricted funds. I think it's very important that we realize we are spending other people's money to drive this mission. And I think in every possible way, we should be as efficient as we can. And we should be very careful on how we spend our money. I think it's important to remember that we are stewards of other people's funds and driving forward programs that they are invested in, whether it be a government agency, a private foundation, a private donor. They have an investment in what we are doing, and we should really manage that investment to the best of our ability. Our reach is far, it's across the state. It's in many different areas. It's youth, it's families, it's businesses, it's youth workers, it's youth organizations. It's vast, and I think that's really exciting, the amount of work that we do. I have people sometimes say, give me the elevator speech of IYSA, and I said, well, do you have time to go to the 32nd floor? Because there is a lot that we do, and I am so honored to be part of that, and to know that even though I'm not in the direct service and necessarily working with the youth or with the youth agencies for that sort of programming, that the work I do behind the scenes helps all of them move forward and drive their missions forward.
You can see all of our accounting and bookkeeping segments at beoshow.com. During the broadcast, scan the QR code. It's the quickest way there. While you're there, sign up for our newsletter. We update it every Tuesday. Subscribe to the Business Equity and Opportunities podcast and listen to our contributors on your schedule. Later, our focus is design. Before that, though, how to resolve an office brouhaha. This is Business Equity and Opportunity. Welcome back to Business Equity and Opportunities and our Running Your Business Day-to-Day segment. As a boss, conflict resolution will be a critical skill to help ease issues that can prevent a peaceful workplace. Richard Burke works for JAMS Pathways, which offers dispute resolution to companies.
This is Business Equity and Opportunities, running your business day-to-day.
Time to meet a new friend and contributor here on Business Equity and Opportunities. Richard Burke is kind enough to talk to us about a kind of a tough topic, but a crucially important one, particularly for somebody who may be the boss in a small business. Richard, thanks for being with us. Conflict resolution's the issue. Kind of get our viewers up to speed as to how you've become an expert in this.
Well, gosh, Scott, I've been resolving conflict as the youngest child in my family pretty much my whole life. But since I graduated law school close to 40 years ago, I've spent 4 years as an assistant district attorney, 25 years as an academic professor teaching conflict resolution and consulting, and now almost 9 years at the company that I work for. And we are the largest private dispute resolution service provider in the world. And we get involved in every kind of conflict, including those that should never get into litigation. And if you want to learn more about that, it's the JAMS Pathways initiative under jamspathways.com. So there's a lot there.
Well, like you said, hopefully we can head some of that off. I guess in general, do we see more workplace conflict, or does it just feel that way?
Well, a little bit of both. I checked some statistics, and so the Bureau of Labor Management statistics say that conflict is actually, at least violence in the workplace, is sharply down from the mid-90s. But when I talk to our mediators and arbitrators across the country at our 29 offices, they say that in the employment world, there's a lot more incivility and rudeness. So I do think that people are having a more stressful time in the workplace.
What are some of the common then ways we see that actually play out in the workplace?
Well, people feel like they're not being treated fairly, and they say things that maybe aren't so super sensitive. They might, because of the nature of remote and hybrid work, say something on a Zoom or put something in a chat, and there really isn't a chance to debrief that gracefully over the coffee pot. And so relationships deteriorate, and people start to quiet quit, or maybe worse.
We also are at this point in the year where we get the get-togethers, the holiday parties, things like that, maybe the more traditional face-to-face settings. I suppose on the one hand, that could be a good place to work on those relationships, although it also seems possibly to be the very kind of place where things come to a head. What are your thoughts as we head into the Christmas party season?
Well, forced socializing is a lot of pressure for people. And, not everybody is as adept as they'd like to be at mixing business and pleasure. So for some person, they just watched a great Netflix comedy special and they tell a joke, and somebody else finds that dramatically offensive. So I think people need to be on their guard. If you're a leader, you want to keep people busy, you want to minimize alcohol use, or maybe eliminate it if possible, if that's graceful. And I think you want to keep your holiday party relatively short. If people want to socialize separately, they can use that as an opportunity to go to a restaurant or someplace afterwards.
Let's dive a little more deeply into that idea of leadership, because our viewers are the very people who are deciding whether they're ready to jump into the business ownership world, or maybe they're in it right now and they're still growing and learning. Are there strategies to prevent these sorts of things from boiling up in the workplace? Does it start with keeping a keen eye before anything ever starts? Does it ever really stop this task of making sure people get along?
Well, I think that leaders can play a key role in dampening conflict in their office. They're clearly focal and they need to walk their talk. So probably the most important thing I would say to a leader is get trained to manage people. Get some training in difficult conversations, mediation and facilitation skills. Learn about people who maybe deviate from neurotypical. We call that different kinds of minds. It's really not common sense. I've done a lot of work in the academic world, and you talk to leaders in, say, higher ed, and you say, you probably have a PhD, and it's probably not in conflict resolution. I taught for 25 years at a law school, and I can tell you, I still have a huge reading list. So it's not common sense. And if you're a leader, you need to, know what you're talking about in order to lead. So get trained. That's a big one.
That's an important phrase to make sure everybody heard correctly. It's not common sense. So it may be actually requiring some extra training.
And leaders often reach into the wrong bucket. You know, I know a person who's a head of surgery who came out of the military, and when you're operating on somebody and you say, I want the number 2 scalpel, you don't want somebody to question you.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's a very top-down leadership style. But when you're not in the operatory and you're dealing with people, that same kind of leadership style that's worked for you and gotten you to where you want to be may not necessarily work in a different environment. And so people need to know, don't necessarily lean on your only strength. You know, develop your portfolio a little bit more.
You know, and you even said at the top of this, that the idea is to avoid litigation, but as a boss, I suppose you have to be mindful of the fact that just because 2 people have a conflict, that doesn't leave you out of the equation if it either starts or brews up or ends up spilling over in your workplace. There's a responsibility there.
Absolutely, there is. And so I would say, in addition to getting trained, here are a couple of other tips when conflict is happening right in front of you. One is replace judgment with curiosity. That's a big one. You know, I think that there are 4 magic words that can resolve an awful lot of conflict, and probably as a reporter, you know these words really well, where somebody says something, say more about that. That's a big one, right? And so instead of reacting, ask another question. Sort of a corollary to that is, you know, when you think somebody's done speaking, count to 10. Take a breath before reacting. People will usually fill that silence in with important information, and you'll notice things. You'll notice changes in their behavior. You'll notice maybe changes in facial expression, and you don't need to worry about forgetting what you're going to say, because if it was important enough, you're going to remember that. Say what feels right after your 10 count, and it may be different than your first initial reaction. And I would say one other important thing for leaders is to remember, not all conflict is bad. There's task conflict where people are arguing, you know, different perspectives on how to get the job done. And then there's relationship conflict, which really doesn't necessarily belong at work. And so it's important for leaders to keep everybody focused on why they're there. If the focus is on the mission, conflict around the mission and how to get it done is good. Conflict that is, you know, feels like relationship conflict, like if I raise an idea and you critique my idea, well, if we're trying to get the job done, that's great. If I feel like you were personally attacking me in the wrong way, that could be a problem. And so leaders need to, you know, we like to say, separate the people from the problem.
Richard Burke, this has been fascinating. Notes for all to take, whether they're in that leadership position or may soon take one. We really appreciate the expertise today.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I hope that you have a wonderful and conflict-free holiday season. And I'll just say one last thing for leaders generally. Know when you're in over your head. I don't do my own taxes. I hire an expert. So once in a while, if conflict gets a little bit too big for you in the office, there are professionals like me all over the country who have dedicated their lives just to helping out people who are suffering from conflict.
For more information about JAM's pathways and conflict resolution, head to beoshow.com. QR code with your phone hooks you up right away. Coming up next, our success story. We'll meet graduates of the Walker Career Center. First, though, creating an electric shopping experience. Stay with us.
Every business is unique, and every business has a target audience. Circulus Digital Media can help you connect and grow your customer base with turnkey digital solutions that are nimble to reach a customer base that spans the globe. Pinpoint a specific audience down to the smallest details. No matter the size of your business, put Circulus Digital Media to work for you and get results.
Each week on Business Equity and Opportunities, we take time to focus on an industry. According to its mission statement, the design firm Hampton & Company creates an electric shopping experience for all, offering a mix of vintage and bold home decor and trending gift items where humor, pop culture, and affordability collide. Full disclosure, Hampton & Company directed the studio that we share here with Wish TV's Lifestyle Live for the holidays. We spoke of the head of Hampton & Company, Adam Hampton, inside the historic Irvington Lodge location.
This is Business, Equity, and Opportunities. Industry Focus.
Hi, my name is Adam Hampton with Hampton & Company, and we are in beautiful historic Irvington inside the Masonic Lodge 666. Lots of history. What's fascinating about this building is the Masonics used to have meetings here, but it's now one of the first stops on the Irvington Ghost Tours. So yearly we have every Friday and Saturday ghost tours, and they actually meet right out front here and go over the history of the building. We have over 50 local artists and creatives with us. We have vintage items as well as new fun, funky home decor, and my favorite, crystals. We have the largest selection of crystals here in Irvington, and just a mix of fun, fascinating items. But what sets our shop apart mostly is the events we throw. We throw monthly art events, monthly drag shows. Tonight we're actually prepping for the Irvington Holiday Open House. So there's a lot of events that we throw monthly that set us apart and that really let our neighbors and our guests know that we love them and we appreciate them shopping with us. So I've been a business owner here in Irvington for the last 10 years. I volunteered in Irvington with the Benton House Home Tours, with the Halloween Festival, and I just kind of fell into it. You know, I found a home here in Irvington and found it very fascinating that if you were a creative, that if you were a small business owner, they really got behind you and supported you. So I started small with 100 square feet space and expanded to our 2,000 square foot location here at the Lodge. The amount of love, that surprised me. The amount of support, it really surprised me, and it keeps me going every day. There's a lot of hardships and a lot of struggles with owning a small business, we know that, but the reward is amazing, and that reward paid off immediately here in Irvington. We have 50 local artists. Lapis Lily is one of our big artists. She's such a fun creative. She also works here. Brentley, he makes fun earrings. We have traditional artists, clay artists, Becky Kincaid, from all over Indiana, not just here in Irvington, but from all over the state. And they really make our shop unique and special, the items they create for us. So when I first started, it was more vintage items. I found that a lot of vintage shops were closing at the time. So I wanted to have fun, vintage, affordable, but a little bit of funky. And really that's kind of geared us the last 10 years is keep in mind price points, keep in mind that, you know, not everyone can afford the high-end items. So you have a mix of everything. And really antiques are so special now. The young kids are obsessed with them. They're obsessed with vintage clothing, vintage Pyrex. So really just always having that at affordable prices really sets us apart from our competition. We've been very blessed and very lucky. To say we don't have challenges is not true, but so many positive things outweigh any of that. For me, the first challenge I really faced was pivoting when we had to completely close shop in 2020 to online sales. So that was a challenge for me to change this business model. You know, a lot of this stuff you need to touch, you need to see, feel, to change that and switch it to online. That saved our business though, and that was a pivotal moment for us when we did start selling online. And we're actually creating an online shop that will launch in 2024 that we're excited about. So we're rethinking that and making that better, and we're seeing that online sales are an extremely important aspect, and it can be you know, bigger sales for us in the future. So we're looking forward to launching that again in 2024. For me, the most rewarding thing is the letters that I receive from parents of queer kids here in Indiana, the letters that I receive from the queer community. The amount of support and love that to me will always fuel me. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old niece, Raylyn and Riley, and they are my passion. I have this for them. I just invested in an Airbnb here in Irvington and another business that we're launching in 2024. So for me, Irvington, the queer community, and my nieces are why I do this every day, and I'm so blessed and so lucky that I get to do that.
Industry Focus is made possible by Circulus Digital Media.
You can learn more about Hampton & Company, or if you're interested in starting a business and would like to revisit any of our past industry focus segments, they all live at beoshow.com. Feel free to share those and all the work we've done with friends, family, business partners through Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, email. All you do is go to beoshow.com, find the buttons underneath any segment, and share. It's that easy. When we return, it's time for part 2 of our visit to the Walker Career Center in our success story. Time for our success story, a place to celebrate local businesses and the work they're doing. Today we visit a company that says it can help you sleep, support your immune system, and more through tea. This is Nature's Tea Company.
This is Business, Equity, and Opportunities. Success Story.
I'm Lisa Gross with Nature's Tea Company. So I did it for my kids because I wouldn't let them drink the sugary drinks. I came up with this idea. They could have cranberry juice, they could have water, or we could make tea. So then our family would come over and they kept drinking the tea. And I'm like, stop it, stop drinking the tea up. You all can have all the other crap. And they said, well, Lisa, this is really, really, really good. Bottle it, we'll buy it. You should sell this stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm not selling this stuff. Drink the other crap, leave this for the kids. So then, of course, the family kids would come over and they're like, Titi, sell this. We really, really like this. And they would take it back home with them. And I'm like, okay, y'all, stop it. And they're like, hey, Lisa, whatever that is, you got to hit there. I've never had any tea like that in my life. It's real smooth. It's really, really great. Sell it. You got to hit on your hands. And I looked at Kevin and I'm like, what are you talking about? It's just tea. And he's like, Lisa, you know, people keep saying it. You think we should try it? We should go for it? And I'm like, I don't know. If you want to, you can do it. I got to go to work. Because at the time I'm working a full-time job. I'm like, I got to go to work. If you want to do it, do it. Bottle the juice, bottle the tea, whatever you want to call it. He's like, what do we call it? I'm like, I don't know. It's natural. Everything I put in is natural. Let's call it Nature's Tea. So we did.
Well, it's interesting. You know, when people ask you once, can they buy it? Okay, great. When more and more people, but when there's a line of people beating the drum, hey, where is this stuff? You can only decide to either keep giving it away or start to bottle it. So we started to bottle the product in February of 2018. And so we started doing farmers markets in April of 2018. From there, we went to Georgetown Market. That was our very first store in September of 2018. And then we got into a large chain in Chicago in 2019 of February. And I could bore you with the details. It sounds easy. This is the hardest thing we've ever done as a family or as an individual. Getting into stores and shelf space is very, very difficult. But we've managed to do that. We've made it through a pandemic, and now we're in a lot of different stores. And now we have 7 flavors as opposed to the 2 we started with. Well, I think the thing that surprised me the most is how difficult it was. As a consumer, you walk in the store and you see thousands and thousands of items in the store. And you don't really understand the backstory of how they got to the shelf. So that process of going from, hey, I got a great product, to, hey, would you put it in the store, to, is there any available shelf space, to, how do I keep the shelf space? That walk is, when you don't know, I always say you don't know what you don't know. Well, I didn't know any of that, and there was no one to call, there was no one to talk to. So I had to learn how to negotiate that path. So that's what we're doing now. About a year ago, I got this grand idea that we should be in a stadium. Now, I'm gonna bore you with some details. You think getting into stores is hard? getting in the stadiums and places like that is darn near impossible. So we're at the Combine. We had a weekend at the Combine, and the NFL is here, and they're touting how they're helping small businesses, African-American businesses. And so I stood up and said, hey, no one's helping me. And we had an article in Forbes magazine that talked about how I was not happy with the Indianapolis Colts for not giving me a chance. We got a phone call, we had some meetings, they tried our beverages, they loved them, and here we are. We're proud partners of the Indianapolis Colts. Our future is very, very bright. We feel that with our brand being low sugar or zero sugar, made with real fruit, no dyes, no additives, if you will, we think that that's a market for people who want to have a healthier beverage. There's nothing better than meeting a new client who loves our product. It never gets old, never gets old, whether they're a baby or an older person. It never gets old to see the smile on their face, and they're genuinely surprised when they drink our drinks, and either they don't believe it's tea, or what kind of juice is in it, or all these other questions that are favorable from our standpoint, because we're trying to make that mark where it'll be a drink that they'll love and continue to purchase.
That is today's Business Equity and Opportunities. Thanks to all of the guests who've shared their stories. If you'd like more information about the topics on today's show, find the links on our website. Scan the QR code right now. It'll get you straight to beoshow.com. While you're there, look for segments from the past from each of these 7 weekly topics. Watch them, download them, share them with the buttons right underneath through social media. Listen to and subscribe to our Business Equity and Opportunities podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Subscribe to that. Also, subscribe to our newsletter that we update every Tuesday. And if you have questions or a success story, we'd like to hear it. Send us an email at beo@wishtv.com. Remember, support your local small business this holiday season, and we'll see you next week for more Business Equity and Opportunities. Till then, I'm Scott Sander. Have a great day.
Business, Equity, and Opportunities, made possible by InnoPower, Bose McKinney & Evans, Gemco, Fifth Third Bank, and Indiana University, Indianapolis.